The Infinite Spark of Being is completely supported by listeners like you. No ads, no sponsors, just your support. If you want to help keep this going, there are 3 support tiers on Patreon for $10 a month, $15 a month, and $20 a month. No locked content, just a way to say I value this. You can also visit the website to check out books, merch, one-on-one sessions with me. Just click the About button, learn a little bit more about who I am and what I have to offer. And don't forget the YouTube page. That has the podcasts as well as binaural beats that help with meditation, rest, and sleep. So thank you for your support. Let's get started. Welcome to the Infinite Spark of Being podcast. My name is Keith Welsh, and today we're going to get into some problematic stuff. It's going to get weird, it's going to get a little icky, but we're going to get through it together. And I ask you up front, as the kids say, let me cook. Let me get through this. Please be patient. Get to the end of the podcast. Find out what I'm trying to tell you, okay? But today we're going to talk about a man who some call a prophet. Some call him a madman, and some call him nothing because they've never heard of him, but his name was Milton William Cooper. And if you do know who this guy was, you know him as Bill Cooper. His 1991 book, Behold a Pale Horse, is infamous in conspiracy circles, and it's also found its way into hip-hop lyrics, libertarian reading lists, militia ideologies, and even odd spiritual bookstores. But we're not here to marvel at the weirdness. We're here to ask deeper questions. Why do people like Bill Cooper resonate so strongly with certain types of minds? What did he get right? What did he get right that's only now starting to surface? And why is it so hard to accept that someone so unpolished, so paranoid, and so unwell in many ways might have seen something? So this episode isn't about making Cooper a hero or a villain. It's about discernment. It's about finding the golden thread of truth in a room filled with smoke. And as always, it's about bringing the mirror back to ourselves, because all of this, no matter how crazy it sounds, says something about you and me. So here we go. Behold a Pale Horse, Bill Cooper, Conspiracies, and the Cost of Knowing Too Much. Thoughts about these sorts of characters that it's difficult to know where to start. And like people such as Bill Cooper, my thoughts and my feelings are very complicated. I was raised around very complicated men. My dad was a complicated man. I was raised with a lot of conspiracies. More notable was the Randy Weaver Ruby Ridge conspiracy, which I think really hit close to home for my dad. For a lot of reasons. But I have a lot of sympathy in my heart for people like Bill Cooper and Alex Jones and these wild-eyed kind of men shouting into microphones. I see myself in them a lot, you know. The older I get, the more I see myself in my dad, or my dad in me, however you want to see it. So my heart is open to them. And some of it's crazy, some of it's off base, and some of it's just not. Some of it was on point. So we're going to get through all of it, and please be patient. Some of this might trigger some of you, but let's just get through it. See how we can wrap this up and put a ribbon on it at the end, and see if we can learn something, right? So let's start with the basics. Bill Cooper was a former naval intelligence officer turned radio host, turned researcher, turned independent publisher. He gained a lot of attention in the late 80s, early 90s for his claims about the U.S. government's secret involvement with aliens, globalist agendas, and a plan for world domination. But something to understand. Yes, these things were talked about in under the radar books, magazines, whatever, but this guy was on the radio telling people this. And I've said this before with these sorts of people, they aren't becoming rich from it. So take the idea that they're looking for fame off the table. That wasn't an option then. I mean, now I guess you could Billy Carson and Chris Bledsoe your way into movies and television, but back then you couldn't do that. And that's why these people are so fascinating to me. Now, when I say things like aliens and globalist agenda, some of you scoff. Even I give a little internal eye roll, but we have to ask, are we scoffing and rolling our eyes because we looked into all of these things, we did all of the research and came to the conclusion that they are false? Or have we been trained to respond that way through the smugness of pop culture? So I'll tell you a story. Some of you may know about this, some of you may not, but there was a famous rash of UFO sightings, which is referred to as a UFO flap, that happened in the late 90s. It was called the Phoenix Lights. This was well publicized, it was well documented, witnessed by thousands of citizens in Phoenix, Arizona, as well as Nevada. Well, there was a famous press conference given by the governor of Phoenix, Fife Symington, where he claimed to have discovered the source of these sightings. Well, about that time, a staffer in an alien costume comes out. He's handcuffed and then taken into custody. Everyone laughs, and that's the end of that. Well, later on, Fife Symington admits to having had a close encounter with an alien craft at that time during the flap. He said, "I am a pilot, and I know just about every machine that flies. It was bigger than anything I've ever seen. It remains a great mystery. Other people saw it, responsible people. I don't know why people would ridicule it." Think about that. Citizens seeing, knowing what they saw, a government official publicly ridiculing it, and then later admitting to seeing the same thing and stating, "I don't know why people would ridicule it." So for those of you that throw the term gaslighting around without having any idea what it means, that's gaslighting. And the government does it to us all the time. Remember after 9/11? Remember they hate our freedom? Even though they told us why they did it and it had nothing to do with our freedom, but the power structure pushed that narrative on us anyway, right? Now, I'm not going to run down the list of instances throughout history where people were told to look the other way or were told that they weren't seeing what they were clearly seeing, but it happens. So to piggyback further off of last week's episode, it's easier to dismiss someone like Bill Cooper than it is to listen to him. It's easier to dismiss him than to start looking things up and trying to figure out what the fuck he's talking about, right? And there are words that we are trained to dismiss. Words like globalists, aliens, conspiracies, UFOs. And we're trained to see these media people, these newscasters, as another arm of the intelligentsia. And if they scoff and they roll their eyes at something and make smug little jokes, then it must mean that I should too. I mean, it's interesting, right? We're at a place in history where we're discussing UFOs in front of Congress, right? And people are still rolling their eyes. Why do you think that is? We're talking about non-human biologics in front of Congress under oath, and some folks are still rolling their eyes. And I don't want to go off on a whole thing here, and I know I've said this before, but I do think it's important in this episode. But most folks ingest information in the way that they have conditioned us to take it in, right? And it's very quick clips distributed by the state-approved media outlets. Again, back to last week's episode, the development of the 24-hour news cycle wasn't seen by these fucking corporations as a chance to really unpack a topic, right? It was seen as a way to cram more topics at faster intervals into a 24-hour period. And this keeps people hooked, and it allows for more ad revenue. So this wasn't meant to keep the populace informed of global events. It was invented by Ted Turner as a way to make even more money. By the way, it's Jane Fonda's husband, or was? I don't know. But I say that to say this. these issues, these topics, they require more time than they're given by the power structure's vehicle for informing the masses. And they require a lot more time and insight than the masses have been trained to engage with, right? So if you want this information, sure, start with this podcast. But if you want to understand it more, you'll have to get into some truly brain-numbing literature. I'll do my best to unpack things here in the most thoughtful way possible, and I'll cover as much as I can. But hey, like, I have a life to live. These could easily become documentaries. So back to Bill Cooper. What made Bill Cooper different was that he wasn't trying to build a brand. He wasn't chasing clout. He was angry. He was sincere. He was tormented. And he believed deep in his bones that he was trying to warn us. And that's what makes him compelling. He didn't build a media empire like Ted Turner. Instead, he built a bunker. Now, published in 1991, Behold a Pale Horse is a wild, chaotic mix of essays. There's scanned government documents, transcripts from Bill Cooper's radio show, The Hour of the Time. And inside of it, you'll find some more wild shit, like claims that AIDS was created as a population control weapon. Allegations of a secret pact between the U.S. government and extraterrestrials, diagrams of FEMA concentration camps, accusations that the Illuminati run the global banking system, and warnings about mass media being used to sedate and manipulate the public. Now, if you're new to all of this, this might sound like pure lunacy, and a lot of it might be, but let's slow down. There's something else going on here. And that something else is very, very nefarious. And it's something that I'm going to sound like Bill Cooper, Alex Jones. I'm going to sound like all of them right now. But bear with me. Again, be patient with this episode. I just want to say this. Okay. So it's the 21st century, right? It's 2025. And I think that we can all agree, all of us reasonable, thoughtful people can agree that media could never and would never, ever be used to sedate or manipulate the public. There's no way that would happen. I mean, if that was the case, surely somebody would report on it, right? Like one of these new, like maybe MSNBC would do a piece on it, or Fox, or maybe even NPR would whisper some sort of a message about it. But no one is talking about it. If the media was being used to sedate and manipulate the public, the politicians would be up in arms because it could be used against them. So they would surely say something, right? And they don't. And that's because the idea that mass media would ever be used to manipulate or sedate come on. Movies, sitcoms, documentaries, newsreel, like you're telling me that that's used to manipulate public opinion? Get the fuck out of here. You know, another thing while we're on this topic, AIDS as a population control weapon? What, are you kidding me? FEMA concentration camps? I am completely insulted by this. I had a friend who died of AIDS. I know an old man that was in a concentration camp. And you're just gonna say the media would manipulate people like that? So what I'm doing here is showing you how I believe this happens. The government over time, CIA, FBI, whatever, one of these 3-letter organizations, leaks out information. Some of it's true, some of it's false. And you lump in some of the true with some of the false, and then nobody knows what's real anymore. In fact, if you believe one thing, and that one thing is maybe crazy, and then you say something like, hey, I believe media is used to manipulate the public. Well, now I can dismiss you because you said the other crazy thing, that AIDS was a population control weapon. You see? So the same thing happens with conspiracies, right? I mean, I remember one time saying to my mom, did you know the president knew about Pearl Harbor before it happened? And she said, yeah. So, you lump in real conspiracies with fake ones. Nobody knows what's real anymore. Nobody wants to sound crazy because nobody wants to get kicked to the outside of the tribe. Because if you're on the outside, if you are perceiving yourself as the other, then it registers in your brain where physical pain registers, and nobody wants to do that. So we all stay in line, and they know that. So that's my opinion of this. I don't know what of these 5 things are true. I have no idea. But I have a sneaking suspicion that maybe one of them is true, right? That maybe media is used to sedate the public. As for these other things, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe the government, what I really like is that UFOs are now called drones. So, anyway, now to make matters worse, this part is going to be hard for some people to hear and is probably going to turn some of you away. And if that's the case, oh well. But in the spiritual world, we want everything to be love and light. We want peaceful vibes. But sometimes truth doesn't come wrapped up in a linen fucking robe. Sometimes it comes out of the mouth of a guy in Arizona shouting into a CB. And it doesn't make it less true. So here's what Cooper got right. Verifiably, historically, and sometimes prophetically. So way before the Patriot Act, right? Before Edward Snowden, before the phrase domestic spying was being tossed around during cornhole tournaments at barbecues, Cooper was warning that the government would use fear, particularly the fear of terrorism and internal unrest, to justify surveillance. It's for your own good. And I would say that after 9/11, his warnings became very accurate. Government overreach, phone tapping, unchecked data collection, cameras on every street corner. It happened. We all remember the color-coded warning system that kept us braced for the next attack. And remember this, he was saying all of this in the early 90s. This wasn't QAnon. This wasn't some subreddit thing. This guy was reading obscure declassified documents and connecting the dots before Google existed. And this sets him up for what I was talking about. Like, you don't know what's real, you don't know what's false. Cooper also talked about at length how fear was the most effective tool of control. Create a crisis, offer a solution, and get the public to hand over their freedom willingly. Let me say that again. I don't think you heard me. Create a crisis, offer a solution, create an enemy, offer a solution. So whether it's a virus, terrorism, or economic collapse, he said the same playbook would be used over and over again. Any of that sound familiar? I don't know. He also predicted decades ago that mainstream media would become indistinguishable from government propaganda. Not because of some cartoonish Illuminati like puppet master thing, but because corporate interest and government interests would touch tips. And guess what? It happened. We live in it right now. We're bathing in it every time we open our phones. And lastly, one of my favorites, false flag events and the manipulation of national tragedies. Who was it that said never let a good tragedy go to waste? And this one's very controversial, obviously, but Cooper was one of the first to suggest that governments have a long history of allowing or staging crises in order to justify policy shifts or war. Gulf of Tonkin, Operation Northwoods, weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. These are no longer theories. They are declassified history. Cooper just said them out loud before it was cool to know. We're in the middle of one coming to light right now as we speak. And that's the thing. When people say he's just a crazy conspiracy theorist, it lets us off the hook from having to reconcile how right he might be about something, right? I want you to remember something. I want you to remember after 9/11, when anyone who said, hey, are we sure about this when it comes to Iraq and Afghanistan, anyone who questioned it was treasonous. Don't forget that happened. Don't ever forget it. And I'll tell you what, at the time, I'm in my mid-20s maybe, I'm watching this unfold on a television in a hallway at a Hilton. I was working as a banquet waiter. And me, dumb old banquet waiter, looked at the TV and said, that doesn't sound right. And lo and behold, right? But at the time, if I spoke up, it was treasonous. I was anti-patriotic. I wasn't, I was letting the terrorists win. So don't ever forget that if you're old enough to remember it. Now, to make matters worse, you can't talk about Behold a Pale Horse or conspiracy culture in general without at least touching on Alex Jones, because in many ways, Alex Jones is the spiritual and cultural successor to Cooper, whether he wants to be or not, and both ran into similar troubles. These are the issues that people run into when they completely submerge themselves in the darkness of this stuff. Both men dug deep into the machinery of power, pointed their fingers at all the things. Both warned us about the erosion of rights, the manipulation of perception, and the blurring line between government and corporate control. And both were and are deeply misunderstood by the mainstream. Now, I want to be clear about something here, and I said it at the start. I have sympathy for these people. Think what you want, but I'm very empathetic to where this kind of stuff takes you mentally. I don't believe that Alex Jones is a bad person. I don't believe that he set out to hurt people. I don't believe he's evil. I think that, like Bill Cooper, he's one of these guys that got swallowed up by the thing that he was trying to warn us about. And I think he knows it. So when we look at men like Cooper and Jones, we need to have the maturity to hold both things, right? That someone can be right about a lot of things and still be wrong in damaging ways. And sometimes under the weight of psychological strain and overexposure to darkness, that happens, right? I've experienced this myself to a certain extent, and I believe that I can at least understand how it can happen. I mean, at one point, working in the addiction field, I saw so much of the dark side of people, the laziness, the thoughtlessness, the willingness to forsake their children, their family, their friends, and then sitting and doing one-on-one trauma work, that it swallowed me whole. And all I could see was sadness, thoughtlessness, victims everywhere I looked. In fact, one Saturday, I did 5 sessions back to back in a row. And on one horrible day, I did, I think, almost 9. It's no joke. In fact, one day, this is how screwed up my head got. In fact, I'm at the rock gym, climbing gym, with a good friend of mine. And I looked over and I see this guy hugging this very young girl. And I was fucking furious. I looked at my friend, I go, look at this fucking pervert. Jesus Christ. I felt my blood boil. And my buddy goes, that's her brother. You need a break. So I get how you can submerge yourself in something till it's all you can see. I was burned out. I'd filled my consciousness with so much darkness that it became my mind's reference point for everything. So I see how Bill Cooper and Alex Jones can go off the deep end. When Christy first met me, I was a walking dark cloud. Everything was horrible to me. Everybody was... It was just very dark, and my head was in a very dark place. Now, real quick, let's talk about what Alex Jones has gotten right. And yes, there's actually a lot. He was one of the first to talk openly about Bohemian Grove, and he filmed the inside of it. And you can say what you want about Bohemian Grove, but it's definitely fucking weird. And if you haven't really dug into everything, I'd bite my tongue. I would do a little more research. It's fucking weird. He was the only media figure prior to 9/11 that was saying, hey, this guy, Osama bin Laden, is planning something. And I'm specific here. I say media figure because intelligence agencies were talking about it. In fact, I remember somebody who was not on trial, but at a hearing, and I want to say Oliver North, but I could be screwing up all of my things. I think it was Al Gore talking to Oliver North. This was before Al Gore was vice president. And he said, so who do you, in a very snarky, shitty way, goes, so who do you think the most dangerous person in the world is? And the person who was sitting there, I don't know if it was Oliver North or not, said Osama bin Laden. So somebody knew about it, but he was the only one who was talking about it. And that's kind of telling because he didn't have any corporate control. He covered the Jeffrey Epstein network years before it was widely acknowledged. I mean, if you want to get deep into that, the Franklin cover-up was, kind of the prototype for that. He actually reported on government mind control experiments, referencing things like MK Ultra before mainstream outlets treated it as anything other than some fictitious comic book story. Now we all know MK Ultra was real because fucking Ted Kaczynski was involved in it. I mean, those of you that still don't think that's real, go fucking do a little reading. He questioned the Iraq War intelligence. He called out the manipulation of public opinion around this fucking weapons of mass destruction shit. He was doing this when your major news outlets were not. Why? Because, again, he wasn't under corporate government control when it came to what he was going to say. And this is something to think about. And I'm not saying that, this doesn't mean that I think Sandy Hook was I'm saying that you can't just look at the whole thing, all right? And he also raised the alarm on corporate censorship, on digital surveillance, on the global consolidation of media ownership, all of which are now mainstream concerns. So, it's a complicated thing to talk about. Like I said at the very start, these people are complex. You're complex. Please, if we could all get inside your text message thread with your goofy friends, God knows what it would look like. And I know people will point out that he wasn't accurate about this or that. And well, okay, fine. But he was talking about it, right? When you just wanted to stuff your head in the sand and watch Jeopardy and pretend that there was nothing going on and that Bill O'Reilly was right and that, what the fuck was that guy on MSNBC, Chris, or the fucking pumpkin-headed twit, and that men like Bill Cooper and Alex Jones were staring the monster in the face trying to warn us about it. And again, this is that thing where all this information comes out where they write about everything. No. But some of this shit with Bill Cooper, give it some time, man. We're finding out all sorts of weird shit. And don't you dare latch onto that shit about AIDS. There's a whole bunch of other things in that book. That's what they want you to do. They want you to grab the thing that makes no fucking sense and use that to discredit all of the truth so that you don't, you don't notice the other shit that they're doing. And, Jones, just like Cooper, he got dismissed for his tone, for his delivery, the emotion, not necessarily content. And that matters. And the same thing happens to me when you fucking dipshits say things about the way I talk. Your message would be much better if you didn't curse. Go fucking sit it. The fuck. We struggle to accept that someone who sounds like a man yelling over a ham radio with blood pressure issues might be pointing to something that's true and real. We want truth to come in a calm, polished NPR fucking voice, but that's not how it works. If you've ever been around a guru or a swami, they're complicated people. Like you look at, if you ever see that documentary, Wild Wild Country, Osho had a little bit of a coke problem, had a lot of issues, but when you read his books, the fucking message is right. What are you going to do? Do the opposite? Or I'm going to find a perfect teacher. You're not going to find one, dude. They don't exist. Sometimes the people who see what's really going on don't have the luxury of being composed. Now, yes, we have to talk about Sandy Hook because it's the elephant in the room when you mention Alex Jones. And look, that was an incredibly painful, tragic misstep, and it hurt people. It caused real harm, and Jones has since acknowledged that he got it wrong, obviously. But I've got news for you. Those media outlets that you trusted all those fucking years, they got shit wrong too. And they continue to get shit wrong daily. Do they apologize? Absolutely not. Do they retract statements? Sometimes. But most of the time, no. And those are missteps that hurt people too. Don't you fucking tell me that those people haven't. But see, this is the thing. When someone gets a bunch of shit right, they want to pick the one misstep and go, that was wrong, or that this other thing wasn't completely accurate, but pretty fucking close. And again, I couldn't tell you the last time I listened to something Alex Jones had to say or the last time I read Behold a Pale Horse. but I hope you get my sentiment here. So here's the deeper layer. And by his own admission, Jones's, during that time, he was exhausted, drinking too much, overworked, and psychologically burned out from living in this constant stream of conspiracy outrage and fear, right? You've been there. Some of you have been exhausted, drinking too much, overworked, psychologically burned out. But lucky for you, you didn't have a microphone in front of your face. We didn't all get to watch you ruin Christmas. But what are MSNBC, Fox, CNN, NPR, what is their excuse when they get all this shit wrong? What's their excuse when they're shown that they completely fucking misstepped, right? They double down. Cooper and Jones are both a cautionary tale. When you live in a reality where everything is manipulated and nothing is what it seems, it becomes easy to lose your grip. That's not just a media ethics issue. That's a mental health issue. That's a spiritual overload. It doesn't mean Alex Jones is evil. It means he's a human. And lucky for you, when you do this shit, nobody's watching. And we should all be careful not to gawk at the wreckage, right? At least not without asking ourselves, what would we be like if we were under that same kind of pressure, living with that level of intensity and suspicion for decades? And, the best thing about Instagram Reels is we're starting to see it now. You see it with the what's what they're calling now the woke right. You're seeing everyone go too far. And now you're putting the camera in your face. But since, nobody knows who you are, we don't, and you're not pointing out anything accurate, nobody cares. And I'm sure for most of you, that you'll scoff at, and say you'll scoff and say it's a poor excuse. I understand that. But, ask yourself, when was the last time you believed in something so strongly that you were willing to go to the mat for it? Think about that. People poke fun at Mormon missionaries and Jehovah's Witnesses, but when was the last time you believed something so strongly that you were willing to go knock on a stranger's door to tell them about it? Or do anything more than sharing some fucking snarky social media post to piss off your family? Or that you felt so strongly about what you believed or how you saw things that you were willing to do a podcast, write a book, attempt to talk to others about it? Anything. You don't do it. Think about that. When you see these Mormon missionaries walking down the street and you're like, oh God, hey, I'm not a fan of this shit either, but you know what? I wouldn't do that. They must really love it. And here we've got Jehovah's Witnesses that stand next to, it's like a magazine rack they roll around, standing out there in 90-degree heat, just in case you want to talk about it. They don't approach you. They just stand there. I used to be very involved in animal rights. This was late 90s. And I know what it's like to stand there with a sign. And I did a lot of things because I can't just stand there with a sign. I have to do something crazy. But I know what it takes. And I know most people won't do it. You'd rather sit there and argue at Thanksgiving. So let's just think about that when we're judging these people. And remember, there was no money in what Bill Cooper was doing or what Jones was doing early on. I mean, now he's probably okay, but I don't think so. It's the same as the paranormal experiencers. And we've talked about this in the past. People dismiss it as some scheme to make money. And to those people, I say, that statement says more about you than it does them. Remember, we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. Now, this is a good time to talk about passion. We commend passion in our culture. But I would like to remind you, the word passion means a barely controllable emotion. And Krishna says passion leads to forgetfulness and a lack of remembrance. Anytime we become consumed and passionate about something, anything, we run the risk of becoming forgetful and have trouble remembering that our own sanity must come first. So let's take a breath here. This isn't just a podcast about conspiracy theories. It's a podcast about you and your mind. Because there is a spiritual trap hidden in all of this truth-seeking. It looks noble, it feels powerful, but it can become just another distraction. You can spend your life chasing the truth from the material world and never be free. You can know every fact, decode every symbol, name every Rothschild, and still be trapped, still be angry, still be lost in the story. And Cooper fell right into that trap. He saw too much. He believed too much. And eventually, he couldn't tell the difference between the signal and the noise. Same thing with Jones. He stopped trusting people. He went to war with the IRS. He lost his home. He carried a gun on his own property at all times. And that's not clarity. That is collapse. Bill was a strange figure, and I feel for him. I see Alex Jones the same way. And maybe it's because I've danced on that edge, continue to dance on that edge, often in my own life. Obviously, not to the extent that these two men did, but close enough to understand it to some degree. The word klesha in Sanskrit means ignorance, distress, or affliction. And one time Lama Losan looked at me during one of my barrage of questions and said, Keith, needing to know is also a klesha. And he was right. Now, for whatever reason, we don't want men like Bill Cooper or Alex Jones to be right because they're messy. They're emotionally erratic. They say stupid things. They're not polished. They're not easy to respect. They make you uncomfortable. But that's exactly why they could be right, because they weren't groomed by the system. Think about that. They weren't curated. They weren't approved. And again, before you cling too tightly to what these men may or may not have done wrong, consider how often your current source for what you believe is the truth is wrong and never blinks, never retracts a statement, never says sorry. They just keep going. And sometimes worse, they'll just use sleight of hand to distract you long enough to gaslight you into the next controversy. The people who tell us the most inconvenient truths often come in the least palatable packages. So we look away, we call them crazy, and sometimes they are about certain things, but buried underneath the rage and paranoia, there's often a core of raw, unfiltered truth, a glimpse behind the curtain. And it challenges us because if a man like Bill Cooper was right about anything at all, what else might he be right about? That's what has happened in this country in the last 4 or 5 years. People who once believed everything they were told are now waking up and asking, if they lied about this one thing, what else could they be lying about? Here's what I believe. The real conspiracy isn't just some underground base. It's not just a Bilderberger meeting or lizard-human hybrid breeding programs. The real conspiracy is this. You've been told that you are powerless, that you need experts, that you need to consume, that your job is to obey, that your mind is dangerous, that your spiritual intuition is a joke, that your divine nature is delusional. That's the lie. And it's been told to you through school, religion, media, and culture. You don't need a secret document to see that. You just need to sit still and remember who you are. That's the conspiracy that Cooper missed. Yes, you've been lied to. You've been lied to about Vietnam, Pearl Harbor, 9/11, COVID, JFK, Operation Northwoods, UFOs, and what might be behind our human experience. Don't forget that. That's the conspiracy. So read Behold a Pale Horse if you want, but read it like you'd watch a dream unfold. It's symbolic, it's erratic, it's potent. But do not let fear hijack your nervous system. Don't confuse knowing with awakening. Don't build a prison from the very truth you're trying to use to escape. Remember, awakening doesn't mean knowing all the secrets. It means knowing the self. That's who you are. That's who you've always been. Bill Cooper didn't die peacefully in his sleep. He didn't live long enough to be vindicated by the things that he got right, and he wasn't surrounded by friends or loved ones when it all came to an end. He died on November 5th, 2001, shot dead in a gunfight with law enforcement outside his home in Edgar, Arizona. It was just weeks after the 9/11 attacks. After years of warning about government overreach, surveillance, false flags, and a tightening noose around liberty, he met the very fate that he feared the most. And whether you think it was justified or tragic, it's hard to ignore the symbolism. A man saw too much. A man who trusted too little. A man who in many ways became a prisoner of the very knowledge he tried to give away. And that's the lesson. Because knowing something isn't the same as being free. Being right isn't the same as being at peace. Seeing through the illusion isn't the same as escaping it. Bill Cooper had eyes like a hawk, but he carried it like a curse. He couldn't stop looking, couldn't stop warning, couldn't stop defending himself against a world that kept confirming his worst fears. And it wore him down. It wore him down psychologically, spiritually, physical. I think a lot about how lonely that must have felt. Knowing things that no one wants to believe, yelling into a microphone in the desert, begging people to wake up, and watching them either mock you or turn your warnings into fuel for their own ego-driven movements. And I don't say any of that to glorify the man. I say it because it makes me pause. Because I know how easy it is to get lost in the search, to spend your life pulling on a thread, trying to unravel the illusion, only to realize the mind has woven 100 more in its place. So maybe the point isn't to pull it all apart. Maybe it's just to watch, to see clearly, but gently, with presence, with some humor, with love. Bill Cooper saw real things, but he also lost his center. And if there's anything we can take away from his story, maybe it's this. Don't let the truth make you bitter. Let it make you free. Let it soften you. Let it return you to yourself. Let it remind you that the real awakening isn't about defeating them. It's about remembering you, that you are the infinite spark of being. And that's it for this episode. I hope you found something useful here, something grounding. If you're reading Behold a Pale Horse, read it with some discernment, not dogma. Watch how it affects your nervous system. Stay anchored, stay human. I love you, I love you, I love you. Don't be scared. You reminded me, and now I'm reminding you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If the infinite spark of being has brought you any value, consider supporting the work. You can join the Patreon for $10, $15, or $20 a month. It's a simple way to keep this project going with no ads, no fluff, just us. You can also head to theinfinitesparkofbeing.com for books, merch, one-on-one sessions with me. Just click the About button, learn a little bit more about what I do. Also, check out the YouTube channel for episodes and binaural beats that help with meditation, rest, and sleep. I love you. Thank you. Take care. See you next week.